Problem 1701 here, and today we're going to talk about the 10th Doctor and where he stands in 2021. Because I think there is a question to be asked of whether the 10th Doctor is overrated. And the reason I bring this up is I see while the 10th Doctor is hugely popular, he is one of the most popular doctors. You could easily make the argument he's the best doctor. He's kind of the modern series equivalent of Tom Baker. When most, especially non-diehard fans, think of Doctor Who and classic Who, they're going to think of Tom Baker. I think most people, when they think of modern Who, they're going to think of David Tennant as the face of it, and that's an understandable assumption. He was overwhelmingly popular at the time. I was a huge fan of his. He was my solid number two for a long time. He was really close to my number one too. They were neck and neck. Tennant was like my favorite actor for a while there. Even when I did my last Doctor ranking video a couple of years ago, he was number two, solid number two. And I'm not quite sure now. And I've seen other people in videos talk about how Tennant was once like their number one or their number two. And he's you see some of these ranking lists where he's more in the middle or even on the lower end. Not at the bottom, never at the bottom, but he'll be in the middle or the lower part of the middle. And I see this more and more, and it seems to me that there are a lot of fans who have outgrown Tennant as they experience more of Doctor Who, and a lot of fans, Doctor Who, modern Who, new Who has been on for so long now, for 16 years now, that a lot of the people making these ranking lists who are on YouTube, who are grown now, were kids when it started, which is mind-boggling to me because I was fully grown when the modern series started. But a lot of them were little. They were 5, they were 6, they were 7. They've grown up with New Who, and a lot of them have gone back and watched Classic Who, and I always admire people that do. I really have a lot of respect for people who started with the new series and go back and watch the classic series and that enjoy the classic series. They like seeing more of this character. And I've enjoyed watching how a lot of these people, as they've experienced more of modern Who and as it has grown and changed, and they've gone back and watched classic Who, and they've got to see more incarnations of this character, more experiences of this character, that their perception has changed of the character, and their perception has changed in a lot of cases about what makes this character good, the qualities in the Doctor that they like. Because each incarnation of the Doctor, each actor who plays the Doctor, brings different kinds of qualities to the Doctor that appeal to some people more so than others. Each Doctor, every Doctor, all 13 Doctors has their fan. Every single Doctor, there's somebody that's their favorite Doctor. The 13th Doctor, there are people out there that's their favorite Doctor for some reason. The 6th Doctor, there are people out there that's telling me the 6th Doctor is their favorite Doctor. And I'm going to guess a lot of that has to do with Big Finish. There are people out there who tell me Capaldi's their favorite Doctor, and I never get that one at all. But I'm not in any way insulting those people. That for them, the qualities that he exhibits as the Doctor, that he embodies in his version of the Doctor, are what makes him their favorite. Naturally, a lot of people, Tom's their favorite. I've met people, John's their favorite. I've met people, Patrick's their favorite. But for a lot of people out there, Tennant is their favorite. Tennant wins contests all the time as the best Doctor. But it's interesting to see how some people do kind of outgrow him, because while he has a lot of typical Doctor qualities, there's a lot of things about him that aren't. You'll hear a lot of people talk about how human he is. And he is. He's one of the most human Doctors, more so than most of the others. Most of the other Doctors, the way they portray the character, you can tell this guy's from another planet. This guy is not human. Even John has a certain seriousness to him that he seems slightly removed from the human race. Like he kind of stands apart. Tom is like that. Patrick does that. Even though Patrick still fits in pretty well, he doesn't strike me as human. Sylvester does that. Capaldi definitely does that. Even Matt does that. For me, the more human Doctors would be, I guess the classic equivalent would be Peter Davison. Peter Davison had a very human Doctor. Although for some reason that hurts his Doctor. For some reason, the complaint that's one of the complaints against the 5th Doctor, is that he seems too human, too vulnerable. Whereas that seems to be a plus for Tennant sometimes. Some people like the human part. Because to me, the Fifth Doctor and the 10th Doctor do have some similarities. And like even me, that's one of the reasons I think he might have gone down in my estimation. Because again, he was my solid number 2 for a long time. And I think he's a little too human. He doesn't quite have that alienness to him that I tend to like in my doctors. 2, that kind of excited childishness he has to him, kind of like Matt also has. Sometimes I think that can bother people as they get more used to other doctors. Some doctors pull it off better. I think Troughton and Tom do it better than anybody. That kind of childish silliness they can do. Although Patrick, sometimes you don't know how much of it's really him and how much of that's a facade he's putting on. Tom is really good at it, but he does it in stages. Tom can actually be very serious at times too, especially in his first 3 seasons. He has very serious moments. But even Matt at times, you wonder how much of it's a facade, how much of it's not. Tennant, it seems very genuine. And Tennant can have some good angry moments. It's one of the things I like about Tennant. I like me some dark Tennant. But I've really had a lot of trouble trying to figure out how to do this video. Because it really is hard to put together. But is he overrated in 2021? Here's my question, the best way I can put this. To the person watching the video. Think about your thoughts on Tennant while he was the Doctor, whether you started with him or whether you started with Eccleston and moved on to him, and he was your first one that you really had a chance to really get to know and grow, which is part of the reason I think Tennant's so popular, because we only had Eccleston for that one season, and then he regenerated, so right as you were starting to get attached to him, he regenerated. So Tennant, for a lot of people, was the first Doctor they really had a chance to get to know and grow with and get used to. He was the first one that when he regenerated, you really felt that sense of loss, because a lot of people started with the new series. So my question is, going back to it, was think about what your thoughts on were Tennant when you first started watching him, whether you were a Classic Who fan moving up, what did you think of him during his run, or whether you were someone who started with Tennant, someone who started with a modern series and Tennant was your first real Doctor. And then compare that also to perhaps what you were thinking of him right after he left. Say during Matt's first season or 2, you were probably still riding high on Tennant. And compare that to what you feel about Tennant now, all these years later, when we've had more Doctors, or when you may have had a chance to go back and watch some Classic Who and learn more about other Doctors and what makes other Doctors and the qualities other actors bring to the role. Where does Tennant stand now? So it's really interesting when you take Tennant's performance from back then and you compare it to all of the other actors who played the character. Does it still measure up? And what qualities do you like in a Doctor? Does Tennant have the qualities that you like to see in what you consider to be a good Doctor? Like for me, Capaldi is not super high on my list. He's kind of middle ground because Capaldi's Doctor doesn't have the kind of qualities I like in a Doctor. Whereas in other people, that's their favorite Doctor. So for someone who's Capaldi's their favorite Doctor, where does Tennant rank on their list? Because Tennant's Doctor is very different than Capaldi's Doctor. Where does Tennant fall on their list? And why? So that's my thing. Is Tennant still the best Doctor? Is he still the most popular Doctor? Would he still rank that high? I mean, for the modern series Doctors, is he the best? For all the Doctors, is he the best? I can't quite figure out. See, I've actually been trying to redo a ranking list because I feel like I need to update it, and I'm having trouble with it. A lot more trouble than I did with my first one. When I did my first list, the top 5 were easy, and like the bottom 3 were easy. My top 5 was very solidly my top 5. I knew what 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 were solid. It was my 6 through 10 that was the weird one. I couldn't quite sort the 6 through 10 out. That took a lot of work. Now that I'm redoing it and my list has changed, as I've got to see more of, like, say, Troughton, for example. I love Troughton. I've always loved Troughton because I've seen some of his since I was little. But with the animations and everything, I've got to experience more of his. And then I also got to watch the Crotons, which is hugely underrated. And then I've gone back and I've watched John a lot again, even though I've seen a lot of John. I've been rewatching some of his. I've got to see a couple of his I hadn't seen before. I'm really looking forward to season 8 coming in. And just kind of reevaluating. And I find that it's my top 5 this time that's causing me problems. Is Tennant still my number 2? And if he's not, is it just because I haven't watched Tenet in a while? Because back when Tenet was running, I used to watch his episodes all the time. I've seen some of his episodes a dozen times. Even some of the ones that aren't super popular that I like say Gridlock. I love Gridlock a lot. Or 42 is pretty fun. I actually really like Season 3. Season 3 is great. Or Series 3, I should say. Series 3 is great to me. I've watched it so many times, which is why I was a big Tenet fan. But now that I haven't watched any of his in a while, because I've seen him so many times, is that one of the reasons why he might not be my number 2? Maybe if I went back and watched all of his era again, he'd be right back on the list. I don't know. All I know is right now I'm having a heck of a time trying to pick number 2. My number 1 is very solidly my number 1. I don't think anybody's going to dethrone that. But my number 2 is a huge question mark right now. And it's like between 3 different doctors. And matter of fact, my 2, 3, 4, and 5, I have no idea the order they go in. And a lot of that is down to Tenet. I can't figure out where to put Tenet. Because I can't figure out if the reason why he's been number 2 so long isn't the nostalgia I have for him, even though I didn't grow up with him, because I've been a Doctor Who fan since the 80s. But for some reason, he just hooked me when I was watching him. But now that I've seen more of other Doctors, and then even though I saw a lot of the classic Doctors, I've gotten, since I live in the States, I didn't have access to a lot of that stuff, say, in the 90s. I only have the episodes I saw on PBS as a kid. Now that I've been able to buy more DVDs, though, and watch more DVDs, and watch the Blu-ray sets, you know, I've experienced all these other Doctors. I'm not quite sure, because it's really hard to pin down what qualities really make a Doctor for me. I do like my Doctors, the kind of silly oddball types, like, you know, Tom, Patrick, David, Matt. Although oddly I have a strong love for John too, even though John's very serious in the role. John is really good at being serious without being arrogant. I need to do a video on that sometime. But I can't figure out where to put Tenet. This whole video is a ramble. My question to you is, where does Tenet fall on your list? If you're doing a top Doctor ranking list and you're ranking your Doctors, where does Tenet fall? And where did Tenet fall during his era and maybe a year or two after his era compared to where Tenet would fall now? Because it just seems to me so many people that used to love Tenet, and he was like their 1 or 2, that in a lot of these ranking videos, he's more around the 6, 7, 8 range, sometimes lower, simply because people have grown out of him. And the qualities they want in a Doctor are better embodied by different Doctors. So that's my long, garbled rant about that. I'm curious to know what you think. Do you think the 10th Doctor's overrated? Where does he fall on your list? Comment down below. Let me know. I'm always excited to engage with you guys. Check out my main channel, Prowl1701, PROWL1701, where I talk about all things Star Wars, usually more coherently. And there's other things to do. Click the like button, click the subscribe button, click the bell for notifications. I've started a Patreon page if you would like to contribute to that, which helps you steer the direction of my channels with things you would like to see. The link is in the description below. Most importantly, though, stay safe out there, and thank you for watching.